I was really looking forward to trying out a new tank again. And this latest version is absolutely insane. This is the first smartphone to feature a laser projector with a 4-meter range, an automatic focus, and a native resolution of 1280 x 720. What does this mean? Well, it's definitely a huge leap compared to any other built-in projector in the world. But that's not all. This new 8849 Tank 4 Pro can hold up to 36 GB of RAM, a monstrous battery of over 11,000 mAh, an ultra-powerful flashlight. You'll see it later, by the way, lighting up a cave and how durable it is when I'm going to put it through some tough tests here. Of course, the downside of having improved the laser projector so much is that they've had to downgrade some aspects, as you'll see next. I imagine it's to try to keep the launch price of these tanks, but anyway, let's get to the unboxing. And at this point, it's quite similar to its predecessors. You already know that you can find all of them on this channel, including the Tank 3 Pro, which, as you can see, already has over 400,000 views. Regarding accessories, something I like, apart from the fact that it comes with an extra screen protector, is that 120-watt fast charger that's included in the box. Thank you for continuing this trend. And here it is. Here is this monstrous tank, in this case the Tank 4 Pro. The truth is that in terms of design, it's quite consistent with previous models. Made of rubber, high-quality plastic, and metal. It weighs more than half a kilo, specifically 530 grams. The camera module is protected by a plastic rim, just like the screen. In this case, they have changed the screen protector. Now it's somewhat bluish, and I think it's more resistant than previous versions. But let's move on to the ports. At the bottom, in that compartment that helps protect against water and dust, you know it has IP69 protection against dust and water, there's a USB Type-C port and a 3.5mm audio jack. Thanks, Tank, for continuing to include it in your devices. There's also a microphone. The corners are very well protected and the frame is also metallic. On the side, besides those vents where one of the fans is located, there's the unlock button with a fingerprint sensor. But it's at the top where things get really interesting. Here you'll find the vents for the second fan. There's also an infrared port, and check out all those sensors next to the updated projector, which means this version doesn't have a physical dial like previous versions to adjust the autofocus. This is where the real leap of this Tank 4 Pro is, and on the other side you'll find the volume buttons with a certain texture, and it also has this big SIM card tray, which you can easily take out with your fingernail. Notice that it can hold 2 SIM cards and a micro SD card of up to 2 ETB. This is probably one of the largest SIM card trays I've seen. It would also include 2 action buttons, as Apple would call them, which are extremely customizable and flush with the frame. And this is how it would look in your hand. Obviously, this beast won't suit every hand, not just because it's so big, but also because it's so heavy. But anyway, if you've made it this far in the video, that's something you already know. And let's just say that's the price you pay for having so many things inside that other smartphones don't have. And one of them obviously is its projector. It's much improved compared to other versions. So at this point, I'm going to talk not only about its screen, a very good screen as well, AMOLED 3K, 6.73 inches, with a 120 Hz refresh rate. However, in my opinion, it could use a bit more brightness. Let's say that's something to improve in future versions, adding a higher peak brightness. We're definitely looking at a much better screen, especially compared to the first versions of this tank. Also, something I like is that even when the screen is wet, the controller doesn't go crazy and works more or less well, as you can see. Therefore, these are the kinds of details that not all companies pay attention to, even brands that are much more well known than this one. So in this regard, I did like it. The screen, as you can see, has some reflection. I think it's mainly because of that screen protector. But being an AMOLED screen at 120 Hz with 3K resolution, obviously any multimedia content is going to look really good. Very rich colors, good detail. But obviously, if you buy a tank, it's not exactly for its screen. It's because of its projector. And this is where I'm going to pause for a moment to explain to you what the differences are compared to all the projectors this brand has had up until now. The interface, as you can see, has changed very little. And this is where the really important part comes in. What has actually changed? And that's because this is the first 720p DLP projector integrated into a smartphone. In other words, HD resolution in a projector inside a phone. This is the first time we've seen this anywhere in the world. And also, the autofocus has been improved with those sensors. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's no longer a manual dial. As for the settings, they're very similar to previous models. However, one change, for example, is that you can set an automatic shut-off time. For example, if you fall asleep watching a movie on the projector, you can set it to turn off automatically at a specific time. But at this point, it's better if I explain it to you. And you can also see it live. And now you're seeing how it's done. You would see this last tank projected. The truth is, the first thing you notice compared to other versions is that it's brighter and also sharper. And, well, I don't know if you'll be able to hear how the fans sound. But honestly, it's quite bearable. And by the way, yes, you can still see the image even if the screen is off. Honestly, this is really appreciated and makes it look even better. When it comes to moving through apps, you can see that it's just as fast on one as on the other. And without a doubt, this is where this type of content really shines. It looks spectacular. Also, notice that even if it's a bit tilted, it quickly detects the tilt and orients itself correctly. I really love how it does this. Plus, it's pretty fast and works really well. If it detects its position incorrectly, either vertically or horizontally, it fixes it immediately. And in the end, you can get a screen of up to 100 inches. I also like the sound, which you'll notice more later. The truth is that it's quite powerful, and it's a good companion for this projector, which I insist is the best integrated projector you can buy nowadays in HD. I think this is where this brand has invested the most money and where the real innovation of this new tank lies. It's amazing, especially if you're in optimal lighting conditions, because you can already see how it looks and also how it gets wet. And even though the projector is running and the fans are working, check this out. And you can't forget that this phone is a rugged phone. That means it's very well protected against any kind of weather, and it's even submersible. And I love this because you could say they're aquatic projectors, since the fan vents have membranes that let air out but don't let water in. The point where I think it's most noticeable, as I was saying, look, I don't know if you can see these little dots here. These are the pixels per inch. This is what has improved the most. I also think the brightness level, as I mentioned. So the definition is better, the sharpness, the detail. Anything you're watching is going to look better than it did on the projector used in all the previous tank generations. Take a look so you can get an idea of how my hand compares to the screen. Honestly, it's absolutely amazing, especially considering I insist that it's inside this phone. And of course, you can also play through the projector, projecting a game at over 100 inches from your phone, even though it's not the fastest processor in the world. Some games like this one run beautifully. And what I especially recommend is to connect a controller via Bluetooth, set this up somewhere on some surface, and be able to enjoy your favorite game on a colossal scale. And we move from something I liked, like the projector, to something less impressive, like the cameras. Main camera and zoom, both 50 megapixels, 32 megapixel selfie camera, and 64 megapixel night vision camera, 20 times digital zoom. The camera interface, though, I really didn't like at all. It doesn't even have HDR, which is hard to understand. And the Pro mode only allows an exposure time of 0.3 seconds. Therefore, I would say its camera setup is insufficient. You're already seeing some examples. I think they downgraded this area to invest in the projector. If you aren't concerned about the camera setup, this won't be an issue. But if you want a bit more camera performance, you should go for previous generations like the Tank 2 or the Tank 3 because I think they have better cameras than this one. Of all the sensors, I like the night vision sensor most, which you'll see after the video test. Recording with this latest tank, the Tank 4 Pro, this is how its stabilization would look and how its microphones would sound. Right now, it's recording in full HD at 30 frames per second. And this would be its highest resolution, that is 4K at 30 frames per second. No mode allows more than 30 frames per second. And the stabilization, at least on screen, might be something to improve in future versions. And look, here you can't see anything at all. I'm in complete darkness and I have an e-ink device which you can't see at all. What's going on? When I bring this camera closer in infrared, it's able to show any information in complete darkness, including, as you're already seeing, this book I was telling you about. With any other smartphone without a night vision sensor, in this case the Tank has a 64 megapixel one, you wouldn't see anything at all. And in fact, this is how the video recording would look through the Tank. Notice that it can even pick up the dust. Therefore, the level of detail is incredible. And I'll say again, there's not a single trace of light, which is really impressive. And now let's talk about the audio, which I actually liked, especially its power, as you'll hear later. But pay attention to this, because it's able to expel both dust and water through the speaker. And you can see that if it gets wet, it can quickly sound good again, thanks to this draining feature. Now, regarding the sound, if you go to sound and vibration all the way down, sound enhancement, turn on the hi-fi mode, it's something I recommend. And now, here's a test of how its speaker sounds. Above all, what stands out to me is the power and clarity of its sound. And now let's move on to the hardware and software of this 8849 Tank 4 Pro. As for the fingerprint sensor, it's not the fastest in the world. It also has double tap to wake and double tap to turn off. That said, the interface does feel faster, mainly because of those 120 Hz. The vibration motor is quite powerful, and it feels very similar to the previous generation. And that's because we're talking about a Dimensity 8300 CPU. It also comes with 512 GB or 1 TB of storage, in this case, UFS 4.0. And you can choose between 16 plus 16 virtual RAM or 18 plus 18 virtual RAM. It would also come with stock Android 14. The rest of the interface, however, is exactly the same as its predecessors. When it comes to using various everyday apps, you won't have any problems. It works really well. Also, the 5G Wi-Fi and GPS have all worked for me. Everything has worked perfectly. Even for gaming, it's true that it doesn't have the best CPU in the world, but it's more than enough. And also, thanks to its two fans, you won't notice it getting too hot at any time. As you can see, I'm about to enter a cave. And since all tanks have this option in the toolbox, there's this camping lamp option to turn on these big flashlights. It's true that they've gotten a bit smaller compared to their predecessors. That's how it is, just don't point them directly at your eyes. And let's turn it on all the way. And look at how it lights up this cave. Honestly, this flashlight is spectacular. Obviously, if you watch other videos about the tanks I've made on this channel, I actually have all of them. In some of them, I compared them with regular LEDs, with regular flashes. And honestly, they're nothing alike. This could be useful for certain professions like a forest ranger or at a camp. Honestly, it could work. It also includes this alarm light, which can be accompanied by sound. It can operate alone, without the white light, or with it. It's your choice. Last section, the battery. It's an 11,600 milliamp hour battery with 120 watt fast charging, and the charger is included in the box. However, there is no wireless charging, and as an extra, it only has this option where you can stop charging once it reaches 90%. Depending on your usage, for example, if you don't use the projector too much, you can go several days, even up to 5 days, without any problem. If you use the projector often, especially at max brightness, the battery will last about 1 to 1.5 days. Now let's discuss its price. How much does this 8849 Tank 4 Pro cost? Well, as you can see on the official website, it would be 596.31 euros. This is the version with 16 gigs plus 512 gigs of memory. But they also sell it on AliExpress, for example, for 743 euros. I don't know when you'll be watching this video. You know that prices tend to fluctuate quite a bit. In any case, I'll leave both links below in the video description. What's my final conclusion about this Tank 4 Pro? Well, if what you're most interested in is having the best built-in projector to date in a smartphone, this is definitely the smartphone for you. But if you're willing to sacrifice a bit, especially in terms of projector detail, in exchange for slightly better photography and saving some money, then I recommend you check out the previous versions. Whether it's the Tank 3 Pro or the 2 Pro, either way, this smartphone is indestructible. And not just because it slips out of my hands and I see it for myself, but because of everything you've been seeing throughout this video. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I love reading them. Subscribe if you haven't already and leave me a like so I can keep recording in these amazing places and keep testing things like almost no other YouTube channel does. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and see you soon.